Hi everyone, it's Edwin here from Edwin Ladd Media, and today I'll be talking with Pete from PhD Designs, and we'll be talking about branding, what it is, when you should update it, and the process involved in working with an agency when looking at branding. So Pete, if you'd just like to introduce yourself.
Yep, no problem, Ed. Thanks very much. My name's Peter Howard, and for my sins, I run a business called PhD Design. Started it back in January 1992, and the three things that we started with are still the three key pillars of the business today, which is branding, packaging, and literature. Graphic design comes in many forms, and it all touches every part of everyone's lives at every point during every day. I know that sounds like a big statement, but we subliminally see graphic design throughout our entire life. So we create the things that make businesses look appropriate to their market. So everything that we do is aimed at getting people better business, better awareness, and we use the tool of graphic design to achieve that aim. That in a real crystallized session sums up what we do.
Fantastic. And so I'm going to jump straight into the questions now that I have for you. So what's the difference between branding and logo design?
Well, apart from spelling, there's a load of differences. You can't really have a brand without a logo. I mean, there are the odd exception, but generally you can't have a brand without a logo, but you can have a logo without a brand. The easiest way to sum this up is if you imagine a BMW advert, like a billboard advert. Imagine that BMW picture in your mind, the billboard, the photography, the style of photography, the angle of photography, the after effects that are put onto it, the words, the narrative that the words are supposed to come, whether it's first person or second person, the typeface that's used, the colors. Now imagine the logo in the bottom right hand corner. Now imagine that whole thing again, but without the BMW logo. You'd still know it was BMW. So it's not the logo. I know it's using BMW as the example, but you've got the kidney bean shape on the grille of every BMW car that there is. That's part of its brand. It's not its logo.
Yeah.
The logo is that propeller-esque, quadrant circle image. I bet there's loads of people out there that don't know that stems from an aeronautical propeller because it used to be into aeronautics. But that's how that's evolved, which we'll come on to in a second, I'm sure, about whether it's a rebrand or a brand evolution.
So as an example with myself, so my brand would probably be me always wearing my black cap. People don't know probably don't read it, but they always recognize me for that. So I'm guessing that's my brand in itself.
Well, they also, and you need to take this, if this is meant genuinely, they also recognize the fact that you're always smiling. You've always got that. No, I mean that honestly. You've got that happy smile that does not look false, and that's a rare commodity. So you've got the people can associate. There's a guy with a beard. He's always got a grin, and he's got a black cap on. He's the photographer. If you've got a camera in his hand, you're pretty sure it's going to be Ed. So there's different things. That is your brand, effectively. You've got that, all those things. So regardless of what logo's on the top of your head, you've got that established. Now, you could create a brand for you, which is a black cap and a pair of like Ronnie Corbett glasses. And that would almost sum you up as well, wouldn't it? So the difference between a logo and a brand is bigger. There's more things to a brand. There's more things that you have to think about because it's often working for a bigger organization. And it often means that the implementation stage of it is bigger. And if it's bigger, you've got to make sure it's right because of the costs involved. Quite often the implementation costs of a branding scheme is the most expensive part. Strangely, I don't know whether you've heard on the news, there was one donkeys years ago about British Airways. They tried to rebrand, I'm talking 15, 20 years ago. And it was reported that a company, a company called Wally Olins, which I believe is still around, Wolf Olins, headed up by Wally Olins. They got paid £5 and a bit million for the rebrand. Now that's a false figure. Rather like Oprah Winfrey's been paid £6 million for that interview the other night. The business got paid that amount of money, but it needed to spend a load of money to actually facilitate it. So that brand, £5 and a bit million, that included basically painting it on the back end of all the airplanes. It included the uniforms. It included the billboard posters, the pilots' badges, and loads of other things. So a brand, the implementation can be monstrous.
No, definitely. I
So
understand
does that give you the difference between logo and brand?
No, definitely. Yeah, 100%.
I mean, you could do a logo. You could see on the internet, there's a load of designers out there on Fiverr that will say they'll do you a brand for 200 quid. Well, it isn't. It's a logo.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you don't expect that to suddenly, instantly give you all the answers of what you ever look like. If it's a logo, it's a logo. That's it.
So say you've got a logo and you've got an established business and you've been running for a while now. When should you rebrand or change or update your logo?
As a broad rule of thumb, well, there isn't an answer as such, but as a broad rule of thumb, there's several key things that can happen in a business's life that would warrant having a rebrand or a brand evolution. One of them is if you fundamentally change what you do. So if you are, I'm making this up now, if you're a tailor, and you've got a tailoring organization and you suddenly decide to change into a nightclub operator, that's a massive difference, and it needs to look different because it would look wrong either way around. So if you quite markedly change what your business's focus is, then there's a reason for it. Equally, if you've had a management buyout, let's say the owner, manager, founder, whatever it is, has decided to cash in his chips or her chips, and there's a management buyout of internal people. If they want to make sure that people know that it's under new managementship, under new stewardship, they may, as part of that, think, you know what, we need to make a bit of a song and dance about this. And the best way to do that is to actually go, right, this is the new look, this is the new us, new management team, new staff, new products, new this, and this is how we're going to be pushing forward. They may have been stymied previously by the old guard going, no, we don't want to do that. They may then go, right, we can, so we will. That would be what I would call a brand evolution. Some people might want to rebrand, but a brand evolution would be more accurate to say there. But the other stock answer I'll give to that is every 3 to 5 years, every company should take a look at it. Because let me give you an example of a mobile phone. In fact, no, I'll give you an example of a pair of shoes. Imagine 20 years ago, right? You suddenly jumped into a time machine and you went out to the shop and you bought absolutely the dinkies doodahs of coolest shoes ever made. They are the dinkies. You wore them for a day or two, so they're in perfect condition. And then you're right, I'm bored now, and you jump back in the time machine and came straight through to today. So these shoes are in pristine condition. You would look a prat. You wear these shoes, you're not going to look good. They're going to look old. They're going to look old-fashioned. You're going to look out of touch with the current trends and everything. That's the same with logos. Exactly the same. So if you've had that logo, if you've had that brand, if you've had that look for the business for 20 years, to change that to something that looks appropriate to today is quite a big job. Whereas if you did it every 3 or 4 years, you just tweaked it a bit. Yeah. Nobody would ever notice that it had changed, but it constantly remains fresh. Yeah. It's to give it another analogy. It's like if you say to a lady, what have you done with your hair? Well, you've done something. I'm not quite sure what, but what have you done with your hair? Rather than, who are you? I don't recognise you at all. It's a massive change. So don't give your customer base a big shock or a surprise. I mean, it is a dangerous game having a rebrand, because if you don't have a reason to do it and you just think, oh, I fancy a complete new look, and you've got more money than you know what to do with, and you think, well, I'll just pay for it to happen, then the message that sends out to your customers can be negative unless you manage that process. Because if you change it, people are going to look at that and go, hang on a minute, why have they changed? And that could be, hang on, have they gone bust? Have they started up again? Have they been sold out? There's something negative happening. People kind of almost instinctively go for, there's got to be a bad reason for doing that. So it's better to do it by stealth. It's better to do it regularly every 3 to 5 years, or have a reason to do it and then talk to your audience before you release it. So tell them it's coming. Don't shock anybody, because if you shock people, that's never a good plan.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
There's a guy you and I both know, runs a property renovation type business, and He's very straightforward, really nice guy, very, very successful. And his big stock answer is he doesn't want to give anybody any surprises. Never gives people surprises, because surprises in his game are always bad. So the same kind of thing is with this. Don't give too many surprises.
You kind of like warm people into the new feel or the new changes that are coming ahead, isn't it?
Yeah. And do subtle things, infer to it, warn people about it, to create a targeted, let's say a 3-tier marketing campaign. You don't need to do this on email. So you give them a little snippet of the logo. Imagine that was your new logo, your new brand. You take a photograph of that bit of it, really close up. Some of it looks cryptic, and then you just send that out on email to people with a question mark. Guess what this is? Because then people are going to go, what? Well, I know who this is from because they're already a supplier or they're already a customer. So I know, what's he sending me that for? That's interesting. I don't know. Give it a day and they've forgotten about it. But you've pricked their interest somehow.
Yeah.
So then do it again in another week's time, where instead of that tiny little corner, you just blow it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And you send that one. And they'll go, I had one of these last week. Oh, blimey, what's that all about? But don't give it all away. And then do a third one, which is the big reveal.
Yeah. No, I think that's great.
Because it hooks people's interest. They're buying into it then.
No, that makes total sense. So when you're working, what's the process if someone was to come to PhD Design and want their branding changed? What's the process with working with you?
6 steps. Okay. It's easy for people to understand it if we divide it into chunks. This isn't an absolute bomb-proof. Every single one of these has to happen, but this is the core of how we go about it. Some steps are identified clearly. This is what we're doing. There is a cost associated to this. This is how long it will take, and that can vary depending upon the size and nature of the business. Sometimes we'll already know what stage 4 is. Sometimes we'll know what stage 3 is. So if I just rattle through the 6 steps, then you'll kind of get what it is. So step 1 is effectively ask loads of questions. It's research, it's discovery. So we'll talk to whoever it is and we'll say, okay, what have you got now? What do you use now? Why don't you like it? What's up about it? Well, why that colour? And we ask innumerable amount of questions as to what they do presently and why they believe that this would be an appropriate course of action. So why do you want it? So that's kind of step 1, a load of questions and answers. There's no design in stage 1 at all, but you've kind of got to be a designer to know what questions to ask, because they're all leading up to stage 4 effectively. Okay. Stage 4 is where it starts to get exciting. So
would you ask, say in step 1, would you ask where it's used as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Give us examples of, if you've got a brochure, let us have a look at it. If you've got business cards, let us have a look at it. Clearly, we'll have a look at the website. If you use email campaigns, let us look at that. We'll look at your social media. We'll look at visually everywhere your brand appears. Sometimes it's with your logo, sometimes it's without your logo. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's, shall we say, less good. There's all sorts of different places that it can appear. We'll ask you to provide us with as many answers as possible. And some we'll just find ourselves. But it's to try and build a picture of what you are now and how you portray yourself to the world now.
Yeah.
So stage 2, then it's questions, it's specific questions. These are 6 questions. So, and these ones are, what are we here for? So what are you in business for? What do we do and how do we do it? So what do you actually do? So if you're a manufacturer, what are we here for? We're here to make widgets. So who do you do it for? So who's your clients? So what makes you different? That's the 3rd question. And who we're here for? So that's your target audience. Who are you making that stuff for? Why do you exist as a business? Who's it for? Who pays your ability to stay around as a business? What do you value most? What's important to you? What really flicks your switch? Is it, I want loads of profit? Well, if it's loads of profit, great, fine. No, there's nothing. Technically, there is no wrong answer. but it helps us build a picture of the type of people, the type of organization, the type of culture that it is. And then the last one is, what's your personality? Try and sum up what the personality of the company is, whether you're basically nice or ruthless. You could be a caring organ. I mean, if you're a fostering organization, you're a caring organization. If you're a solicitor, you're focused on detail. You're detail driven and results driven. If you're a funeral parlor, then it's care, but it's attention to detail as well. And it's timelines. If you're a parachute team, then safety. You know, there's all kinds of things that what is your personality? And we try to build almost a picture in our mind of an animal that fits all those criteria. Sometimes it's quite a weird looking animal, but try and build a picture of a physical creature.
Yeah.
To put that into context, we try and make out the skeleton of a logo. This helps us build the skeleton of the logo, sorry. So if you imagine a logo, a brand, imagine it as an animal. So if this animal lives in an environment where it's very dangerous, it's a real dog eat dog environment, a sales driven, like a recruitment company or a double glazing salesman company, then they've got to be very resilient. So they might have to also react fast. And if they've got to react fast, they're either going to have lots of legs or they're going to have big legs so that they can run out of a situation very quickly. If they've got big legs, they've got to have big muscles. But then if it's a violent environment, then they've got to have armor plating. So do they have fur or armor? So if they've got to be looking all round, have they got one head or two? Do they have eyes on the front and the back to be able to see 360 vision? To try and create a fictional animal, don't even know if that's a word, but a fictional animal that fits that criteria, and it helps us then create the look and feel of what we're going forward. It doesn't matter whether it's purple or brown at that point, because you're talking about the skeleton. Once we've got that, you can build the rest of it around it. So that's step 2. Step 3 is
sounds quite complex. That does, but it makes sense. But it sounds a bit complex, making the skeleton.
It's gonna be fun, actually.
Yeah.
Step 3 is to collate those two together, to just build those two, because that gives you tangible, valuable business information. Step 4, that's when the fun starts. That's when we start using these things, pencils and paper, and we sketch out ideas. That's when the designers can look at all that information and go, right, there's our brief. That's where they are. That's what that kind of animal they are. This is where the environment they work in and live in. This is what we've got to try and create a look and a feel for. So they start creating, we create different sketches and scribbles of what it should look like. Step 5 is the implementation. Now, step 5 is normally probably the biggest area of work, the biggest body of work. Because once you've got the look and you've made all the decisions, so you know what color it's going to be, what typeface is going to be used, the style of wording that's going to be used, the style of photography, whether it's reportage style, whether it's crisp, whether it's blurred, whether it's grainy, whether you've got any gnarliness into it, whether it's sharp focus, short depth of field, blah, 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 all those kind of things that you understand. When we make all those decisions and we wrap that all up, we go, right, they're going to now want business cards. They're going to want a brochure. They're going to want a website. They're going to want an email campaign. They're going to want a blah and a blah and a blah and a blah and a blah. They're going to want cars, vans, livery, factory, showroom, blah. There's all those kind of things that are in the implementation, all the things that the brand needs to be metaphorically slapped onto. I know that's a crass way of saying it, but it's wherever this brand visually appears, that's where the implementation comes in to work out how it fits onto that. So that's step 5. Step 6 really is the last one. I mean, there is a step 7, but that's mainly done internally. But step 6 is to create a living, breathing document that embodies all of those decisions. So it's a brand guidelines document. And you can't underestimate this because it's a valuable document in itself. Some clients have it physically printed. Some clients it's a digital only document that's constantly updated. So when they have something else, they add it to it. So it becomes a Bible of all their stuff. And it's a really good resource as well, because you as a client then can say to, let's take you, for instance. We do yours. You go then to a cap manufacturer that you've never spoken to before, and you say, I want my logo on some new caps, please.
Yeah.
And they go, okay, send us your logo. Invariably, what's happened historically is the cap production company won't understand necessarily the artwork requirements that they're actually wanting. So they'll say, oh, just send us something off your website. Then that will be rubbish because it will be low resolution. You as the customer don't understand the difference between a PNG with a 0 background or a high-res EPS. Is there such a thing as a high-res EPS? Or is it a vector-based EPS? Should it be a JPEG? Should it be a TIFF? You don't understand that, but you shouldn't have to. So if you've got a brand guidelines document that basically, so that you as the customer can go, hello, cap manufacturer, here's my book, follow those rules and I'll pay you. If you break those rules that are in there, I'm not paying you. That's nice and simple then, isn't it? It's clean for everybody. You know exactly what the rules are. They know exactly what the rules are. It's dead straightforward. So we often find that those are what we create, the digital ones, where the customers can give those out to various suppliers and almost literally say those words because it's quite bomb-proof. So I don't know it's failed yet so far. Never say never, but I don't know it's failed yet.
And then I'm guessing the steps between 5 and 6 change, because sometimes if you present the logo to the client or present the concepts, they might turn around and go, can you change this, or I don't like this, or
that's all within stage 4, all within the creation stage. So at the start of the creation stage, the pencil goes on the paper really creatively for the first time, and at the end of that stage, the look and feel is done and agreed and signed off. So that's all within that stage.
Yeah.
The next stage is the implementation. It's how you roll that already agreed design onto other things. Yeah. So you wouldn't move on to the implementation until you've nailed down all those decisions.
Yeah. So I'm guessing
otherwise you'd end up wasting a load of money.
Out of all them steps, I'm guessing 4's the biggest step and the longest, takes the longest time.
It's definitely the most rewarding. You get the most out of it. I'd say step 5 is the biggest because the vast majority of clients have quite a lot of things to implement it onto. But step 4 is the biggest creative challenge. Definitely. Yeah. And it's the one where the clients get heavily involved as well, and they should do. They really should do. It's a collaborative process. I mean, I was doing a conversation with somebody the other day. Weirdly enough, it was an interview with an ex-employee of mine who's gone on to run a graphic design business. And he's dreadful at taking criticism. I'm dreadful at taking criticism, unless it's constructive criticism. And that's where we both agree on that. And that if, let's say, we create something and we think it's great, we might show it to the client as a scribbly, scabby sketch. And they go, I don't like that. Well, that's useless, really.
Yeah.
Whereas if they say, well, I don't like that because, then it's all of a sudden it's got validity because there's a reason for it. So constructive criticism is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. It's constructive. That's the key word.
Because then at least you know where you're at a point and where you need to go to, what you need to change. I have that problem with photos. Say if I've taken a picture of someone, that's how I don't like that. But then I need to understand why they don't like it. Is it the lighting? Is it the pose? Just simple things like that. And once you know that, then you can change it.
Yeah. I don't know whether you might edit this bit out, but a wise bloke once told me years ago a little phrase that sums that up. And he says, I've got 2 balls and neither of them are crystal. Give me a clue.
I like that. So we'll move on to the just last 2 questions I think I've got for you now. So what problems can you face along the way and how do you get around that? I think we kind of just discussed a little bit of that.
There's loads of challenges that can come along the way. There's not that many problems really, because once you start down this road, the only reason that you start this road is if the client wants to change the way they look. And if they want to, then you metaphorically hold hands and walk down towards righteousness yourselves as a team. So there isn't really that many issues that crop up once you're on that journey. It is difficult to identify any problems because they don't really happen. It's just challenges and hurdles along the way. Imagine it's like a 100-meter or 200-meter hurdle race. You've got to get over a few hurdles.
Yeah.
But if you work together and collaboratively with the client, it happens.
What about, and I used to have this problem years ago, is when you working with a team of people, so say you've got a marketing team,
Yeah.
everyone then wants their own input. I know I don't like this, I don't like that. So it's hard to get a decision. How do you get around that?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one, if I'm brutally honest. I mean, we've had a few challenges, not necessarily on branding before, where there's been a marketing department. But if two people in a marketing department are both shouting the loudest at diametrically opposed opinions, that's this kind of thing that we've almost got to back away from and go, listen, guys, we'll take whichever steer you want to give us, but you've got to decide what that steer is. Because if they've got in-house challenges like that, then they've got bigger problems, because their marketing department should be focused. And I suppose part of the branding process is to help them refocus. So, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy then. If they're arguing internally, they need a rebrand. But to be able to do a rebrand, we've got to try and stop them arguing internally. I think it's just you have to put your grown-up trousers on and say, look, let's just sit around a table and work out why you think what they're saying is rubbish. Okay, let's just listen to that. And then why you think what they're saying is rubbish. And find out where the problem lies. Because the problem won't be with us. Because we're being brought in to help solve it. Yeah. So that would be the only thing that we'd have to do. I have been an arbiter in the past of things. So it's a role that I'm quite comfortable playing. But thankfully, it doesn't happen that often. Thankfully.
No, that's good. That's good. And what does a successful rebrand look and feel like to you?
This again is there's a multiplicity of answers to this. One is sales increase, because sometimes the only way to measure it is if the sales go up, but that's not the only measurement of a good rebrand, of a good brand evolution. If it's done well and everybody's engaged within the client business, then what happens is everybody at that business suddenly feels better about the company they work for, because they've been part of the process and they've seen it go from what it was to what it is. So they can't help but think, well, I've been part of that, so I can't help but be a bit proud of it. And if I'm proud of it, then I'll talk about it in a proud or passionate way. And they'll talk about it to their friends. They'll mention it to people. They'll send their emails to people with their email footer on it, perhaps a little bit more. So they'll subliminally get more brand awareness, because the internal people are actually more proud of the way their business looks than they were before. Many times we've come across it where people within an organisation have spoken to us afterwards and gone, oh, thank God you've sorted that out for us, because we've been moaning about that for absolutely ages. That little bit of it, we never wanted to send that out because it's awful. We've had clients say that they've kept brochures as doorstops because they weren't proud of those, so they never sent them out. You think, well, that's got to be one of the world's most expensive doorstops, that is, because of all the intellectual thought that's gone into creating those, and you just prop a door open with them because you don't like them, which is why you've got to get all the people involved along with you for the ride, because if they mentally buy into it, they're going to use that stuff. And if they use that stuff, then they will be demonstrably more proud of their organisation. That then leads to positivity, it leads to lower staff churn, it leads to better stockholder return, it leads to increased sales. Tick, 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 lots of positives.
Oh, that's good, that's good. I've got one of your books here. So I used to go to a lot of events when the events were happening. And when you go to all these places, you always pick up a lot of literature, and 99% of it goes in the bin. But one thing I've always kept is the stuff that you produce. And number one, because it just looks and feels good. But it's all the designs and everything in there. They're just fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that
really,
one
really
that you've got there, those are the ones that never made it.
Yeah. So, but they're still really good.
They are, yeah. And the crazy thing is, every time we do a project, because people are asking us, because we're experienced, we're knowledgeable, we know what we're doing, they're not just saying create a whole load of logos for us, a whole load of this, that, and the other. There's a whole load of freelance designers that will do 50 different logo ideas for you for a tenner. There won't be 50 ideas. There'll be 2 ideas and 48 different derivations of that one, like a purple one and a brown one. They'll be masters too, and they aren't. So what we'll do is we'll create 3 maximum. But the way we go about that is once we've understood what the brief is and the designers get going on it with the pens and the pencils and the colours, we'll go out of our way to work in isolation to create as many ideas as possible. So, for instance, I might come up with 4 ideas on Project X. Neil might come up with 3 ideas. Rachel might come up with 2 ideas. Javier might come up with 4 ideas. So then we get together and our objective is to destroy them. So mine and Rachel's and Javier's objective is absolutely to destroy Neil's ideas. We'll go out of our way to be rude and horrible, but all in a good, we all know each other really well, so it's no problem. But our objective is to kick it, take it around the back of the garages and give it a good kicking. And then it moves on. So then them 3 will gang up on what I've thought of to give it a good kicking. But out of that, we'll end up with at least 3 that definitely stand up to scrutiny. And if they stand up to scrutiny from us and we are trying to kill it, then chances are it's going to stand up to as much scrutiny as the client company can throw at it. Yeah. So we'll whittle all the ideas down to 3 that we know can stand up to that scrutiny. So they'll work effectively. Yeah. So then so by the time the client, by the time the customer gets demonstrated the ideas and the 3 that we are recommending, they know that they've gone through those various processes, that they've been taken around the back of the garages, they've been given a good beating, and they've stood up and been counted. So you know that whatever you pick, it's going to work.
I think one thing I really liked as well is how you present your logos and how you show the process of where it's came from, where it's got to, the sketches, the drawings. And I like that because it shows the whole thought process of how it was developed.
Yeah.
I think that's quite powerful, that is.
I think it's important that people know how you go about it, rather than suddenly going, 2 weeks after the brief's finished going, da-da-da, what do you think? Because you're going, I need to know a bit more than that. They want to know how you've built it. They want to know how you create it. And in a way, that's part of our brand, that we're inclusive. We encourage clients in the days before all this COVID nonsense. We encourage clients to come and sit in the design process. Come and join in. I don't care if you can't draw. We can. So come along, bring your crayons, just be part of it. And it can be fun. And if you've got a job that you can do and get paid for and have fun at the same time, well, isn't that the best job in the world?
Yeah.
It's great, isn't it, really?
And you can tell that you're so passionate about design thing, because it's just like you can see it in you.
Well, I'm crap at lying. I've got a dreadful memory, and I remember years ago my grandma telling me, said, just tell the truth. Tell the truth and it'll set you free, because you don't have to remember stuff. And if you tell lies, you've got to have a really good memory. Yeah,
and you're very straightforward as well as a company, and like how you get things across. It's like it's not bullshit. Basically, it's just this is what it is.
I don't know whether you saw this, but on LinkedIn, I'm going back, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months, something like that. I put a little post on my LinkedIn profile, which got a reasonable response, but it was of things that I'd found within the last few months, little snippets from different design companies around the world, where I'd read it and thought, what on earth does that mean? And I'm in the same industry, I'm probably been in it twice as long as whoever's written it. So I'm looking at thinking, that's bullshit, that is. So I put a few of these up on there and just challenge people to go, what does this mean? Because if anything, it embarrasses the industry, because it's using fancy terminology and posh words to make themselves look and feel more important than they actually are. Let's get it real. Our job is to create the way a client company should look to the world. And you don't need a vocabulary the size of a small planet to be able to articulate that. You've just got to be able to do it straightforwardly. I'm a great believer in keep things simple, throughout everything. Keep it as simple as you can. And if it is simple, it gets done.
Yeah. That's something that I'm a big believer of just keep it simple, and it works. Simple things just work.
It does. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
No, that's great. That's great. Now, thanks, Pete, for letting me ask you these questions about
You're welcome,
branding
mate.
and logo. I will do probably another interview later down the line where we talk about what happens afterwards, once you've got your logo, once you've got your branding, where does it go from there, and how you continue to work with clients. I'll probably talk a bit more about how you say every 3 years things need to adapt and change. Probably
Yeah.
touch on a bit of that as well. But
Yeah,
no, that's
loved it.
really good. Really good.
Superb, mate. Any time you want. I'm more than
Yeah.
happy to shoot the breeze and talk about design, because it's kind of what I live for, really. It's all that I do, and I do love it. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And where can people just find you, all your details, all your information?
Well, it's a
I'll
really
put them
complicated website, so I hope people have got all their pens and papers ready. It's really long. So the company is called PhD Design. So the website is phddesign.co.uk. Yeah.
Yeah. Not coming up on here, unfortunately.
Yeah. So nice and straightforward.
But yeah, no, when I post this, I'll add a link to it so people can find out and see all the work that you've done as well. You've done some
superb. That would be wonderful, mate. Wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Okay. And thanks for joining us, Pete.
Lovely.
See you then.
See you on.
Bye.
Cheers now.